Okay, so here I have the footage that I talked to you about. I will show you the process for. So I already have converted it to Rec 709 using the settings. I'll show you if you have the Artlist subscription, you might want to use it. It's Blackmagic all the way and then Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. Always leave the first node for noise reduction. I will work on the white balance. The white balance of this video is pretty much on point, so I don't really have to do anything about it, but nonetheless, I will check it. Yeah, it's pretty much on point. I don't really have to do anything about it. I remember this was pretty on point. Then I have the exposure. Just leaving the white balance out there if I need to make any further changes, but I don't. I will work on a little bit of the gain, a little bit of the gamma, because that is where my subject exists. Bring down the lift so that there is more emphasis on my subject. Turn it off. This is how it looks before. Turn it on. More emphasis around my subject. Slightly increase the brightness of the midtones a little bit because I want to work on contrast later on. Create a node for contrast. Bump up the contrast with the slider. Pivot to make it a little bit darker. Probably bring down the shadows a little bit. And then using the shadow log wheels, just make the blacks and the dark shadow parts darker. This is how it looks before contrast. This is how it looks after I added the contrast. And I have my saturation node. Since I'm working directly on Rec 709, like this Rec 709, Gamma 2.4, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the saturation. So let's see how much I get with 70. Yeah, I got pretty good on here with the saturation. I think it's pretty cool. I think the skin is just a little bit oversaturated. And what you do with the skin is basically what you do is, for example, you will go over here to the curves, go to hue versus saturation, and then just take a sample of the skin color. It's gonna give you the range. Make it wider. Remember, so that you have a wider range selected. And then what I'll basically do is bring down the skin color just a little bit, like 2 squares down or 3 squares down based on how much saturation I want. And then of course it's gonna affect the door and everything because it also has reds in it. So if I turn it back off, sorry, that's how it looks. Turn it back on. The door looks really good. The leaves look really good. I just don't want my skin to be oversaturated. So I bring it a couple of points down and probably around here 2.5 maybe. Now it looks pretty good. And there I have my look. I'm gonna go full screen and see how it looks. It's already looking so much cooler than before. So see, if I had my skin saturated, it would look very hideous, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. I'm gonna turn this off. And see how the skin is starting to look oversaturated a little bit? That's what I don't want. That's why I desaturated it a little bit. Not desaturated, but I brought it down to the normal levels of saturation. We don't want our skin to be oversaturated. That is the golden rule over here. So always bring down the skin color if there are human subjects in your video, because that makes them look very, very, very ugly. I'm gonna go over here to show you exactly what I mean by that. Over here in the workflow, remember in the previous section we were working on this, so I will reset the saturation levels And let's say I want my saturation to be at 85. So I will click on saturation, give it a level of 85. Everything else looks really good, but do you see how the skin color looks? It looks way too above the level where it should be. Look at the girl's skin and everything. And look at the guy's face. It looks very, very saturated. It doesn't look like a good look. So in these cases, what you do is you go to the curves and then you click and drag on the subject's forehead. We always sample from the forehead first. If we don't have a clear view of the forehead, then we move to other parts. But that is the golden rule. That gives us a better selection for some reason. So I'm going to increase the range, and of course it's going to take out a little bit of parts here and there too, because we have similar warm colors here. But I'm going to click and drag this downwards. If I drag it down, it becomes completely unsaturated. We don't want that. So here it looks much oversaturated. We don't want that look, so I'll bring it 2 squares down. And that's where it starts to look normal. And we don't want it completely unsaturated as well. We want it to be at the normal level while all of the other colors look saturated. That's the golden rule. So if I turn it off, this is how it looks. I'm gonna go in full screen mode. If I turn it on, this is how it looks. Let's see. Now it looks much cinematic, much more dynamic. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the curve saturation versus. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the curve saturation versus saturation. Again, the thing that I taught you, bring down saturation and the shadows. Click around the midtones and bring it up. This fixes the entire look in itself. This. Now my shadows don't have any saturation in them. It's only the midtones and the highlights. And my thing looks much better. My video looks so much better. Like, I really like the look and the direction that it's taking. Of course, I have to do other things and I will teach you exactly how to do them. But this is just 50% of my work that's done over here. I'm going to show you another example. So I have another piece of footage. I'm gonna call it CST because of course it's color space transform. Check the white balance. Yep, now it looks pretty good. There's a lot of highlights on my subject's face. I'm not gonna touch those because it's completely fine. I'll just bring up the gamma slightly, very slightly, because it's going to affect the highlights as well. Bring down the shadows. Actually, my subject's face is sort of getting overexposed. I'm gonna bring down the gain just a little bit. Do you see how it makes an effect on his face? Here it was overexposed. Now it looks better. So I fixed the primary lighting somehow. Let's move on to contrast. Already too dark, so I'm not gonna make it any further darker. And that's about it, I think. Saturation. I'm gonna bump it up to, let's say, 75. My subject looks a little oversaturated, so I'm gonna go in the curves, go to my hue versus saturation. So he has hair around his forehead, so I'm gonna try to see and click and sample somewhere around his forehead and see if I'm able to. And click the other part. Make that wider. Bring down the skin, and it's gonna have an effect on the other parts too. See, because of that. Because there's a lot of noise over here, so I'm gonna bring down the saturation actually. Sometimes this is gonna happen. This is a very good example of why sometimes noise gets introduced into your footage. So I'm probably gonna keep it until 65. That's gonna have a better effect. And then there's overall a lot of noise over here, so I'll show you exactly how we fix that. I can bring it up to 70, and I'll show you how exactly we will add the noise reduction node later on. Even if I let go of the saturation, there is still a lot of noise around here. Look over here, there's so much noise. And we'll fix it, don't worry. Bring down. I'm gonna sample his cheek. Click on one end, make it wider. Click on the other end, make it wider. Click on here. And then bring it down just a little bit because it's not too oversaturated though. So it looks good. I like the look and feel. And I can create a little bit of look in between these two nodes, right? And how do I do that? So I will click and drag the saturation node ahead, press Command Shift, and it's gonna create a node behind my current node. This is the one that I was on. So whichever node I have selected, it is gonna create a node behind it. Let's say I have this node selected. So if I press Command S, it's gonna create a node behind it. But I don't want that. I only want this one. And I'm gonna call this look. And I can create a certain look and feel if I want using the the color wheels and everything. So I want like a warmer tone overall. I'm gonna click offset, drag it a little bit towards reds and everything. Probably have a little bit of those in my mid-tones too, just like that. If I turn it off, this is how it looks. It's very cool, not neutral, but more towards the cooler side. Turn it on, it looks like this. And then this is what I was talking about, like, see, there's like an overcast of warm tones in my blacks around here, over here too. How do I take care of that? So I'll go to my saturation node because I'm going to keep all of those things on the saturation node. Go to saturation versus saturation. Bring it down from the shadows part. And then bring it back up. Somewhere around here. So now it's going to look better. So look at the shadows. This is how they looked. It's a very subtle difference. This is how they looked before any changes. This is how they look now. Before, look at this part. Now. So before, now. Before, now. It's a very subtle difference. But it's a very big difference when it comes to making your video look more cinematic. Let's do another video. Converted it to Rec 709. First notice for noise reduction. White balance. I think something's messing up around here, so let me fix that first. Alright, let's work on the white balance. White balance pretty close, but I'm still gonna make a little bit of changes. Yes, so it had a little bit of warm green overtones. Now it's better, so I can check with my RGB picker. Yes, it is pretty close. Now I can go ahead and work on my exposure, the primary lighting. So my subject exists within midtones and very slightly between highlights. Usually it's midtones from what I'm seeing in our footage right now. Slightly increase the highlights. Down. Shadows. This is how they look before. This is how they look after. Contrast. Probably bring down the shadows a little bit down too. I want to dial in the log shadows because I really want that vibe. This is how it looked before. This is how it looked after. Before, after. Before, after. I think that it's a slightly over contrasty, so I'm gonna dial back the contrast just a little bit, not too much. Let's talk about saturation. Bring it up to 80. So I want all of these to be saturated, but then the same thing we're seeing, like, the skin looks very funky. We don't want that. We want these to be saturated. The flowers, leaves, everything else, except the skin to look like this. So I've given you the secret sauce. go to your curves, go to hue versus saturation. And over here we have a side of their forehead, so it's okay if we do it over here or here. I can click and drag all the way, increase my range using the colors, the pointers, increase the range on both sides, zoom out so I have a better view, and then grab the middle part and then bring it down. So if I bring it down, it becomes this. Then I can add further points too, like these. That probably falls over here, so this is gonna turn into 3 different points. Yes. Maybe somewhere. And we're working between this point and this point. So there are a number of tones of red. That's why we have these 3 points over here. Because they're affecting different parts. This is affecting their lips and the eyelids. Again, box 1, box 2 to bring it to the edge of box 2. Then now it looks better. So this is how it looked before. This is how it looks after. Now it looks much more cinematic with the skin tones fixed up and everything. So this gives a very good start for our colors and everything. And we're going to go ahead and work on different parts of the video later on in the next sections as well. And I'll teach you how exactly to go about that. So maybe just sort of bring up the skin tone slightly because it's sort of a little bit undersaturated. Just bring it up slightly. Now it looks better. Let's view it in full screen. This looks much more cinematic now. Please don't try to obsess over it. Sometimes I know colorists do. It's not about perfection, it's about making it look cinematic and making it look artsy. So that's all you want to focus on. So I hope the 3 demos that I gave you that helped you understand how much my workflow is in terms of its simplicity. I try to do simple steps because I don't want overcomplicated stuff. If I do that, then that's going to take away from me color grading a whole video because I'm only going to be sitting and color grading one shot. So if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them. And then I will be taking you through advanced lighting, enhancements, and creating other types of cinematic contrasts in the next section. Now that we've completed saturation and everything else in the previous sections, we can successfully move on to learning how to do advanced lighting enhancements and then how to move on to making cinematic contrast in our videos. So you must be wondering what advanced lighting enhancement is. If you take a look at what we've done previously in our videos, we've only had one node where we have fixed the exposure generally all over our videos. We haven't really targeted specific areas and then made lighting enhancements to them. For example, if we made some changes to the exposure to this video, we just made it overall on the video. And that part affects the entire video. This exposure node that we created and made changes to, it affects our entire video. It doesn't affect a specific area, is what I mean to say by that. When we did it over here, same thing, overall exposure. When we did it with this girl over here, same thing, overall exposure. So up until now, we've only touched overall lighting. We haven't learned how to fix lighting in specific areas. And when you're working with different kinds of videos, there are times where you would want to bring more emphasis to a certain area instead of fixing the lighting overall, because the lighting overall would be completely fine, or you would have already fixed it. For example, over here, so I'll show you my process over here. Please don't pay a lot of attention to these two nodes in the sense that don't get too caught up wondering what these two nodes are doing together. This is the same color space transform node I usually put to convert my video to Rec 709. And then I will teach you in the next section how to work with Cineon Film Log and everything else. And then you will learn how to put LUTs and how to work with them. So up until now, I have been teaching you how to create looks without LUTs. That's the entire purpose behind all of these things. But in the next section and so on, I will teach you how to create different looks using LUTs so that you are completely equipped when it comes to color grading and you're not just stuck with one method. Okay, so over here, I've done some very basic correction with my noise reduction. I will provide that to you in a couple of sections. And I've done my white balance, just like I taught you. I've done the overall exposure fixing. So this is how it was before. Actually, this is how it was before I added exposure and contrast. This is how it looks now. I fixed the exposure. I'll show you what steps I took so that you're also clear. You're not left with any ambiguity. I did the same stuff, like I worked with gain, highlights, and then midtones, because those are where my subject exists for the most part. And then I worked with contrast. So I did the same thing that I taught you. And the reason why I talk about these things again and again, I take you through the process verbally even, and just visually show you all of the stuff that I've done, the stuff that I haven't done in front of you on the screen, is because I want to show you that I am doing the exact same things that I'm teaching you in the course. So when you're done with the course, you can just go ahead and start working as a colorist. You don't need anything else. So over here, contrast did the same things with the contrast slider, the pivot slider. And then I did not work with the shadow slider because this is a very dark scene. I did not need to lower down the shadows anymore. But I did go ahead and fix a little bit of the shadows, specifically with the log wheels, because I wanted that crisp blacks. So here I have that one, and then saturation versus saturation. I did the same thing that I taught you. I just took out the saturation and the colors from my shadows so that my blacks look black. So this has been dealt with in terms of a basic color correction method. And now I want to go ahead and I want to create advanced lighting enhancements to my video. How do I do that? So first of all, I need to keep in mind that I need to decide which area needs the most focus. Of course, not the lights and everything. Of course, not these reflections. It's the subject. The subject is what I want to bring the most of everybody's attention to. And the rest of it is fine, but my problem, what I think over here is the problem that I have with this video, my concern is I fixed the overall exposure, but there's a lot of lighting and everything that's going on in the background that's taking emphasis away from my subject, right? And when you're color grading, for most of the projects, your focus is going to be your subject or object. Yes, there is going to be lighting and everything behind it, but that shouldn't take away from the focus that needs to be on the subject, is what I'm trying to say. So I usually do it right next to my exposure node because that way I can keep similar methods together. And that's how it's usually done. That's the right way of doing it. I know some people make nodes over here too for advanced lighting, but I do not recommend that. So what I'll do is I'll click and drag my contrast node to the right. And in between these two nodes, I will create my advanced lighting nodes. So I will press Option S, and that's going to create a node for me. And I can call it lighting. All right. And right now I'm going to teach you how to make one power window, but sometimes we will have to make parallel power windows. So we don't have to have a single line that just runs into one node from another. We can work with parallel nodes, and I will teach you exactly how to work with them. So, how do I bring lighting to only one specific area? That part is done with a section called window. So right next to the qualifier section, you have the window section. When you go over here, you will see different types of options to choose from. I'm going to click on one of them to show you exactly what it does. If I click on the square, it's going to create a square on my preview around my subject. And what does that do? I can control the lighting from here that is around my subject and outside of that selection. How do I find that out? So as soon as I drew the square around my subject, you see everything outside of the square is in gray. That tells you that only the stuff inside the square is selected, the rectangle, of course. And if I press highlight, it's going to show me the area that is within my selection. So whenever if I'm going to make any changes to the lighting and everything, it's only going to affect the stuff that is inside the rectangle. When I click on highlight again, I come outside of the selection, the preview of the selection, but my selection still remains the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to color wheels, and here you can do different things. Like you can do all kinds of things. So you can go ahead and only change the hue and the hue of this area. It's only going to affect this area. Look. And if I click on any other node, it's going to remove the box outside of my view. It's going to take it outside of my view. And it's only going to affect the area that I selected with the rectangle. I'm going to press my keyboard, press 5-0 to bring it back. I can only bump up the saturation in this area because I can do anything with this selection. I can only work with the highlights and the shadows also. So let's say I want to bring the highlights way above everything else, right? So this is how it's doing it. For example, this is how it looks when I did not have any selection. And this is how it looks when I have the selection. But this is really visible. What do I do, right? So the first thing that you need to know about power windows, these are called power windows. In the window section, whichever you're going to work with is called power windows. You have an option that says softness, and if it affects all sides of each side affects one side of the square or the rectangle, I apologize. So if I click and drag to the left, it's going to reduce the buffer and the change is going to be very sudden. If I click and drag to the right, it's going to increase the border between the selection and the area that's outside of the selection. So let's see what happens, right? So here it has made it really smooth. I can't tell where my selection's ending and where the other area, the outer area is starting, but I can tell that over here at the bottom and on the right side. So let's see what soft number 2 does. It's the upper part. We don't need it because it's really almost outside of the frame. Soft 3 is this part. So if I increase it, and soft 4, this is how it's going to end up looking. So I'm going to turn off my selection, my node that I was using to work with the advanced lighting. And then when I turn it on, this is how it looks. So do you see that with this window, I have been able to create a specific lighting area around my subject that now it's only affecting my subject and the surrounding areas. If I turn it off, this is how everything looked, and my subject was very dimly lit. But now my subject has more emphasis. But I feel like I want to decrease the lighting in the background. How do I do that? So I want to select the area that is outside of this. So remember these hard, thick lines? This is your selection area. And you can also click in the center and move it around like this. You can move it here. So your water is going to become the selection. But I want it to be around my subject, right? The other thing is that, for example, I want to control the lighting outside of my selection. So how do I do that? It's really easy. I will right click with my mouse on the lighting node and go to add node and go to the very bottom where it says add outside. This is going to add a node right next to this node, and that node will have the area that is outside of my selection. Now that I've created the outside node, the area that I selected with the box is no longer a part of this node. The area that's outside of the box is selected in this node. So if I make any changes, that is only going to affect the outer area. How do I see that? So let's say I come to the primary color wheels and I just bring down my offset. So do you see how that's happening? And if I turn it off, this is how it looked when we started. This is how it looked when we created emphasis through power windows. And this is how it looks when we decrease the lighting in the outer area. Although I can see the square edges because I have trained my eye in these cases. I can see that there's a shift, but this is still so much more better. Now, whenever somebody's going to look at this, their eyes are immediately going to go to the subject's face and not here and there first. We want them to look around. But not before looking at the subject, because that is the emphasis over here. That is why we did all the lighting and everything, right? So if you understand this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this node. Actually delete both of them and create another node, and I'm going to call it lighting again, because I want to show you a couple of different ways of lighting things. So I'm going to go to the Windows section again, and I want to show you this. So I usually work with the circle. This is the most famous one. And if I click and drag over here, it's going to increase the circle very proportionally. But if I want to control different sides of the circle, let's say I want an oval, then I can click on these sides and drag it, and it's going to increase or decrease the circle in a specific manner. Let's say I just want this area right around my subject. Sometimes my mouse can be really sensitive, I apologize. So I'm going to elongate it from here and then make it narrower from here, from here, from here. And then the softness I usually, so softness at this point, like point number 2, is very, it still gives you that sharp edge. I usually try to keep it around 5 or 7, really depends. I don't go beyond 10, because if I really go beyond 10 or something like that, then all of the settings that I've made inside of the selection, they somehow start, they get blurred out so much that they're not contained within the selection. And another way of controlling the softness is to click over here on one of these pink circles and then bring it inside. This is gonna make the softness 0, or you can bring it outside. So I'll keep it somewhere around here, let's say more than 5 at least. This looks good. And then let's say I wanna work on the lighting. So I'm gonna increase gain a little bit, slightly increase the gamma. And then remember, contrast that we did also affects the entire node, like it works on the entire area that's within the frame. We can also use the power windows to work on creating contrast in specific areas. That could be something very interesting you could do. So let's see what's happening. So again, I was able to create, this time it's more, I would say this is smoother and everything. So for example, here I have the lighting, and I can also call it contrast, because for example, if I want to bump up the contrast like this, only within the power windows, I can do that. Let's see. So now, not only have I bumped up the lighting, I've also bumped up the contrast. So this is how it was looking before I added my advanced lighting with the power windows. This is how it looks now. So it looks like, it looks very pretty. The subject looks really, really nice. And I cannot add more than one power window on one node. So for example, look, if I select this, that's not going to work, because if I make anything, for example, if I try to make any change or anything, it's going to affect both of them. What if I only want to affect this area? What do I do, right? This is what we're going to learn in the next lesson. Right now, I just want you to make yourself understand what power windows do. So I'm introducing you to all of the power windows, and then I'm going to teach you how to make different sections inside a footage where different power windows are working with different areas of the footage. So again, right click, add node, go to add outside, and that's going to select the area that's outside of the selection. So now if I want to, let's say this is just showing you how the power windows work. So if I want to desaturate the outer area, this is how it's going to look, because this is only affecting the area that is outside of the oval. How do I check that? I can go over here to the top left where it says highlight. Click over here. This is going to show me the area that is selected outside of the oval that I made. So whenever you create a node that is based on the add outside method, add outside option, that is going to be the area outside of that shape. And this is going to be the area within the shape. So I'm going to go ahead and fix my saturation. So one more thing I want to teach you, and this is really important. Right now, our subject is not moving. So let's say my power window is over here, and then I press spacebar to play my video. And now my subject is moving. This means that my highlights or the advanced lighting that I've done is not going to stick to one place. This means that my subject is going to move outside of the selection. what do I do? Because I just want this to stick to my subject. I don't want it to go anywhere else. And I don't want my subject to go outside of this. I want my subject to be within this area wherever they go. This is very important. So right next to window is tracker. And this is used when you have minimal movements in your footage. And we're going to find out whether this footage qualifies or not. So make sure all of these options are checked: pan, tilt, zoom, rotate, 3D. I usually do clip, and I'm going to show you exactly what frame by frame does. But this is going to make sure DaVinci Resolve understands the connection between the shape you have created and for who the shape you have created. Over here, with my node where I have the oval over my subject, so that DaVinci Resolve understands that I need to keep this oval right around my subject. With this position, with the lighting node selected where I made the shape, I'm going to go to this option that says track forward and reverse. This is going to track the window with your subject. So that way it's going to try to keep the subject inside of this window that we have created. So let's see what it does. I'm going to click on this. Okay, so for some reason the software started glitching on my end. I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly what I was talking about. So I was talking about doing the tracking of the power window. I was talking about when the subject moves, the tracking window doesn't move with them. Right nowadays, because I was able to track it, but I'm going to go ahead, delete these two nodes quickly, and then reset this one, delete that one, reset this one, and make the same changes again. And I'll show you exactly what happens. So please keep watching. All right. So I have more or less the same situation over here. If I turn it off, this is how it looks before. Turn it on, this is how it looks after. And now I'm gonna add a node outside, like the outside area. And I want my softness to be bumped up a little bit, more than 5 points around here. Now when my subject moves, at times they are moving outside of the power window that I've created. How do I make sure that the power window stays with my subject? So I was telling you that you only use power windows where there's very less movement in the footage. Just like over here, we'll see this might not work out or this might work out. Let's see. But you won't use it on in a situation where the subject is running from one place to another place and the camera's following them very fastly, because power windows are not that fast at tracking the area that you assign them to. So if there's a lot of movement, don't use power windows. Then generally focus on the general lighting and contrast and everything else. We use power windows only when there is minimum to no movement in the footage. So with the lighting node selected where I created the power window, I'm going to go to tracker, and I've selected clip right now. Make sure that all of these options are checked: pan, tilt, zoom, rotate, 3D, all of these. And then I go ahead and click on this option that says track forward and reverse. So wherever I am on my video, let's say I'm in the middle part, it's going to track forward from here and backwards too. It's going to track everything that's on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And DaVinci is going to start tracking everything. And now my power window is going to be warped around my subject as they move. So the waves that you see over here is going to talk about, these are talking about whether there is any zoom, whether there's any rotation, anything else. So let's see if this movement was minimum enough for the power window to stay on top of the subject. So I'm going to go ahead and press play. And it seems like it was. Perfect. Oops. So you see how the power window, I'm going to start playing from the beginning. Do you see how the power window was first only static in one place, but now it's moving around wherever the subject is? So I'm going to come outside of the power window and then show you exactly what's happening, because I'm clicking on another node. So the power window isn't active. It's still there. It's just that it becomes active when I click on the exact node it's on. So let's say I'm on saturation versus saturation, and then I click play. You'll see exactly how all of the settings we applied on our subject's face and everywhere, they are going to move with the subject. The highlights, the shadows, contrast, everything. All right. Oops, I did that again. I apologize. All right. So this is how you work with power windows. And then if you want to enhance the lighting in a certain part of your footage, this is exactly how you do it. I'm going to show you a couple of other samples too in this section so that this is ingrained in your brain properly. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the comments. I would love to answer your questions and make sure that you don't have any confusions. All right, here I have a film shot where I'm going to teach you how to fix lighting on two different subjects and then how to do enhanced lighting for a film shot. It's very much similar to what we did in the previous lesson. It's just that I'm going to be using a bit more of the technique. So I wanted to show you this example because sometimes you're going to get projects where you're going to have to work with stuff like this. So I've already left the first node as practice for noise reduction. Here I have fixed the white balance. And I've already converted this video to Rec 709. We don't need to worry about that because this is just an example. I'm going to go ahead and first of all, fix the overall exposure a little bit because everything underneath the bed area and everything is too dark, and this is unacceptable because it does not look cinematic. It looks very hideous, right? So I'm going to go ahead and first of all, I'm going to see where my details exist. They exist within the shadows, midtones, and highlights, all of them. So I'm gonna bump up first of all the midtones, because if I bump up the gain too much, it's also gonna affect this area. I want to fix the overall lighting first and then move ahead and fix the other areas. And then bump up a little bit of the lift. So this is how it looks now. After fixing it, this is how it looked before. This is how it looks now that I have fixed a little bit of the overall exposure and lighting. All right. But now that I've done that, I want to go ahead and bring more emphasis towards both of my subjects in the video. Right now, my eye goes directly to this part. I don't want to focus on the curtains. I want people to focus over here, right? And I want this light to fall on my subject. So a lot of the times, whenever a shoot is done, there is going to be some part of the lighting that you will have to fix. So even if they do perfect lighting at the set, it's not going to show perfectly in the video, and then you will have to make some adjustments as a colorist. All right, so I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a node over here, call it lighting, or maybe lighting 1, lighting 2, lighting 3. But just to remember, I will call it man lighting. This is gonna make me remember this is the node where I fixed the guy's lighting, right? Because I don't want to go through lighting 1, lighting 2, and lighting 3 to find out which node affected the guy. And I'm gonna go to the Windows area, and I'm gonna show you a new tool over here that is called the gradient tool. So it's right over here at the very bottom. And whenever you click, this is how it appears. So you see how everything on the side of the arrow is unselected and everything above this line is selected. This is how this tool makes selections. If I go to highlights, this is going to show me exactly the area that it is selecting. So I can click and move it around and it's going to work with the selection. It's going to either increase it or decrease it. With the arrowhead, I can either rotate it or make it longer. If I make it longer, do you see how it's affecting the softness? That is very important. So I'm gonna take this gradient tool and place it on the window area so that it affects my subject over here. And I don't want it to affect anything else but this subject. And I'm gonna try to mimic the angle at which light is falling on our subject, okay? So I see a little bit of it falling on the woman. I don't want that. Maybe I can decrease the softness and then bring it closer to my subject. And then we'll see how we make the changes. So it looks good over here. And I have selected most of the areas that I want to in terms of selecting the man, because this gradient is only going to affect the man. And then I can go ahead and over here, for example, gain is too much. So I'm going to bring down gain. See how it's only affecting that area? And then I'm going to bring up gamma a little bit. I'm going to bring this closer to my subject so that it has more effect on my subject. So I'm just experimenting with stuff over here. Let me show you how this is affecting our subject. So this is how it looks when the node is on, and this is how it looks when it's off. So I'm still making adjustments right now, but I want to show you how it's affecting our subject. I can even make it lighter in temperature. Oh, I can even make it warmer or cooler is what I mean. So let's say this shot is basically showing you how this couple is having a fraught relationship and their marriage is almost over. So I want to give this a more dramatic look, and I'll show you exactly how. Remember, I told you the power windows can also work with hue, saturation, and everything. The same way they can also work with different types of colors. So I'll use a temperature slider to make it a little bit colder around here, just a little bit. Just a more stylized look is what I'm looking for. All right. Let's see. Yep. And then I'm gonna bring down gain a little bit and bump up gamma because I also want the subject to be lit up as well. So if I go full screen, this is how it looks with the node on. This is how it looks with the node off. The subject looks dark and everything, but now it looks like light is falling on them. So I just want to experiment with it just a little bit here and there. All right. And then if I keep on creating nodes like that, that's not going to affect, that's going to be like too confusing, to be very honest. Right. So I want to go ahead and right click on this node where I have the man's lighting, go to add node, and then click add parallel. This is going to create a parallel node, and I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. So my exposure node is going to this node where I have the man's lighting, like that. And then it's also going to this node where I'm going to light up the woman. And together, these nodes are going into this mixer, which is going into the CST. So don't worry, everything is flowing into the other section, into the other node pretty perfectly. I'm gonna probably zoom in and see what's going on with the guy, if it needs any more enhancements. Since this lesson is only about lighting, I'm not going to touch contrast or anything else too much. I'm just touching a little bit of the temperature because that also deals with lighting. I'm going to bring up lift slightly, very slightly, and bring down gamma just a little bit so that it doesn't look washed out. So this is how it looks without the node turned on, and this is how it looks with the node. So let's see. This is how it looks with the node. This is how it looks without. So it looks like over here when the node's turned off, it looked like light was just entering through the curtain and stopping. And now I've kind of worked on the rays falling on our subject. So it looks like, you know, it's bouncing off of our subject over here, right? So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label this node woman lighting. All right. And my other source of lighting is from here, somewhere from here. I think it's natural lighting, or maybe it's a lamp or something. Light is falling on my subject. So with this node selected that I made for the woman, I'm going to go to the power windows and create a circle. I'm going to turn that circle into an oval and bring it right above, a little bit above my subject's head. Make it slightly smaller, just like this, not too wide. And I'm going to rotate it in the same direction and angle at which light is falling on our subject, okay? So here, and I'm covering the area a little bit above the subject's head and making sure that this area is selected, because do you see how over here, this is still where light is entering the room and reflecting off of the objects and the subject's hands. So I'll tell you what I mean by this. If I go ahead and make it really thinner, then it's only going to affect this area and it's going to feel fake. So I'm trying to cover a lot of area where light is already falling on the subject. This light, the one that's coming from this direction in the left. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to be static and cinematic. And I'm gonna increase the softness at least to 5 points. Okay. And let's see what we have to do. So the highlights look fine. I'm gonna bring up gamma. I'm not gonna touch lift because it's already, I already touched it in the exposure node. So I don't need to touch it again and again and make it look weird, because it's gonna take a lot of contrast outside of our shadows. I don't want that. Let's show you what's happening. So this is the node for the woman. This is how it looks before. This is how it looks after. So do you see, if I turn these off, not the exposure one, I apologize. If I turn these off, okay, this is how it looked before when we had only fixed the exposure, the overall lighting, and this is how it looks after I have enhanced the lighting a little bit. So I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna go full screen and show you. So I'm gonna go full screen and see, this is how it looks now. Light is falling more efficiently and aesthetically on the woman's face and the guy's face. This is how it looked before when I had only fixed the overall lighting and exposure. And now you see in this section why doing only initial lighting fixes overall is not enough sometimes, especially for high budget projects. Or let's say you're doing stuff for your own page. I would suggest doing that because you want to show your expertise, you want to show your skills. And this is how it looks when we enhance the lighting on both of our subjects. So I'm going to increase the lighting just a little bit, slightly bring up gamma. And I want to do another thing over here. So since light is warm over here, I want to add a little bit of the temperature. Slightly warmer, slightly. Like this. So not only is it getting brighter, it's also getting warmer on the lady's face. Another way I can work with lighting is, for example, if I turn my temperature to 0, see how it takes the warm part outside of it? I can also bump up lighting through, I can also bump up temperature through offset by increasing the value of red only inside this power window. So I will, let's say, bump up, I can either do it with hand or just slide it. So I can bring it up to 26 and then slightly bring up green so that it's warmer. This is also another method of doing it. I can press undo and take back the entire thing. Or I can use the entire offset wheel because everything is contained within this power window. I can do whatever inside the power window. Again, increase, let's say, saturation, so it's only going to affect the area in the power window. I can increase highlights or shadows, stuff like that, because the power window is like a border. Nothing is going to go outside of it. And I could also give it like specific looks in terms of working with the offset. So over here, for example, I can make it warm like this, slightly warmer than everything else. So it looks like it's warm and fuzzy over here. Over here, it looks really cold. For example, I can go here and with the guys, because I use a little bit of the temperature, but I can also grab the offset wheel and make it cooler. So do you see how I've created this stylized look? So let me select all of these, go full screen and show you what's happening. So I'm creating this hot and cold, opposite, polar opposite look just to show what's going on with our subject. So this is how it looked before I did any exposure, any lighting, anything. And this is how it looks afterwards. If I only select these two nodes, so this is how it looks with the advanced lighting correction. And this is how it looked before when I only did basic lighting correction. So I've made it more cinematic and everything. Like these stuff like this, you will probably use in ads because they're very stylized in these aspects, right? They're very aesthetic in these aspects. But in films, you're not gonna have one look over here, like warm over here and cold over here. That's not gonna be the case too much, unless it's a very artsy film, right? But just to give you an idea, another thing that I can do over here is like, for example, I also want to work on the overall lighting. So I'm gonna right click on the woman's node and go to add node and then go to add parallel. That is gonna create another node that is parallel to the rest of the two ones. And I'm gonna call this overall lighting. So overall lighting, what I'm gonna do is basically, I'm gonna go again to the window section, create another oval like shape, and I basically want to make the area outside of the subjects darker. So I already have this window working on this part of the lighting. I already have this gradient working on this part of the lighting. I want to work on, basically what I want to do is I want to work on darkening the area outside of this selection because I just want to make this part and this part more dramatic, right? So for example, there are a couple of ways of doing it and I'm going to show you all of the options. So For example, if I go to highlights, it's only showing me this area that's selected, right? But I want to select the area outside of this. So do I always have to make a circle or a shape and then right click on the node and then add a node outside and then make changes to it? No, DaVinci Resolve is not that hard. It makes things easier for you. Here you have two different options. Okay, so we're gonna see what each of them does. So right now, my shape has the selection inside it, but I want to select the area outside because I want to make it darker for my lighting to stand out even more. So with the node selected, it's gonna show me the shape that was selected that I made the power window with. If I press this, this is gonna select everything outside of the selection. This is gonna select everything outside of the shape. If I press this, this is gonna select nothing. I press this, I come out, I press this, it unselects everything. So this is gonna be your friend when you're gonna have to make such changes. Like if you want to create a power window, but you want to select the area outside of the power window, then you're gonna press this option. All right, and then make sure that I wanna increase my softness because otherwise the transition from one part of the lighting to another part is going to be very drastic and it's not going to look aesthetically pleasing. So I'm going to make it at least bigger than 5. And slightly position this above their heads because see how their heads were being excluded? So I'm going to put it around here. And what I'm going to do is I just want to bring down the overall lighting. So I'm going to bring down the overall lighting. It's not gonna have any effect over here because I've already enhanced it from here, right? So bring down overall lighting. Let's see. And come outside of this mode. That's why we were having that fuzzy area because I was in the highlight area. All right, so if I turn this off, this is how it was looking before. If I turn it on, this is how it looks after. So it has further enhanced my lighting. Watch once again, okay? I'm gonna ask you to watch again. If I turn this off, yes, my lighting is enhanced over here. That's falling on the man, and my lighting is enhanced. That's falling on the woman. But there's overall brightness, slight brightness as well. I want to get rid of that because I want to enhance these parts. So if I click here, it takes out those areas that I selected, remember? So if I go here and turn this off, this is how we started. And this is where we are. So it looks much more cinematic. But guys, remember, these people are moving. So what do we have to do? We have to do our tracking, remember? So by selecting each of the nodes, I'm going to go to the gradient one first. I'm going to go to the tracker. Again, press this option, track forward and backward. That way, it's going to track everything when it comes to the man. I'm going to go to the woman. This is more important, okay? Because this is a shape that we're containing it in. And track forward and backward. So it's going to track the woman. There's very minimum movement. So that's why it's not going to show a lot of waves and everything. Then we have overall lighting. And then I'm going to press tracking again. Just so everything is inside the selection. And the selection moves with the power window. Right? So again, this is how it looked without any lighting enhancement, only with conversion to Rec 709. This is how it looks after being converted to Rec 709. This is how it looks after doing very basic lighting correction. And this is how it looks when we enhanced all of the lighting overall. And then I'm going to play this for you. Let's see. Much more dramatic, much more cinematic. So these are the things that I want you to work on, and I want you to pay attention to all of these things. Please practice this. So I hope this lesson makes sense, and I will see you in the next one. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to create my personal high contrast cinematic look that is really famous within my circle. People really like it. And in the next lesson, I'm going to be using the same footage to show you how to create the faded contrast look, which is also equally famous in the entire world. So there are two types of things you can do. You can either choose to create a high contrast cinematic look, or you can do a faded contrast, whichever goes with your style and whichever your client prefers. This is my personal technique. This is how I've built my own style and everything, and eventually you will be able to build your own style. So I've already converted my footage to Rec 709, and I've left the first node for noise reduction, and R means noise reduction. I've already fixed the white balance of my footage, so I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the exposure and contrast. And slowly, with every lesson and with every section, you're seeing how I keep building my own node tree, and I work on one node with lighting, another with advanced, and then contrast and saturation and everything else. And by the end of this course, you will have the entire familiarity with the node tree as to which thing goes where, and you will be able to develop your own style. So I'm hoping that you're getting a lot more information from here, because I'm dispensing years and years of information over here. And the way I'm teaching you, if you keep practicing it, trust me, you will be able to absorb years worth of knowledge, as well as if you practice it every day, I can guarantee you that you will go up to the level of somebody who has 4 or 5 years of experience within 6 months to a year. It all depends on how much time you put into it every day and every week. That's all that makes the difference. So I have my exposure node set over here. Of course, the subject is the focus over here, but her face is really dark. It's in the shadows. The midtones are also pretty dark. And when you look at the footage for the first time, your focus doesn't go on the subject. It goes around here first. That's not the focus. And then it goes over here. So how do we bring the focus to our subject? Let's work on that part. So first of all, I'm going to adjust the overall lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up gamma, because I want to light up my subject properly. But of course, like when I bring up gamma, it also brings up the gain, because, you know, now that we've established and we've understood that it also affects all of the other areas. All right. So with that being said and done, I'm going to go ahead and bring down gain a little bit. It is going to have a little bit of effect on my gamma as well. So this is going to be like a process. I can go ahead and start working on offset overall, but that's also working on the midtone. So it's going to be a little bit of gamble, but it's okay, because now we have access to power windows. So I've made as many adjustments as I could. This is how it looked before. This is how it looks after. And then when I am satisfied with the primary settings, I can go ahead and start working with power windows. All right. So I can use power windows for all different kinds of reasons and for all different kinds of settings. And I will show you how to use power windows for lighting and for contrast over here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and make another node. I'm going to call this subject lighting. So this is where I'm going to be working on my subject. So I will create a power window around my subject first. And there are different ways of doing it. People do it in different ways. So there is no one set way of working on these things. So if you see somebody doing something else, that's completely fine. That's just your personal style and your preference and everything else. All right. So I will create that around my subject. So I have it. The focus over here is her face, and of course